No! I understand the difficult situation you found yourself in, and I do sympathize. But please remember this. A young man lost his life. If you are going to attempt to cover up your guilt with lies, then no matter what the circumstances, I cannot forgive you. But
what are you talking about, Miss Mikotaba? What lies? Miss Pavlova just confessed everything. It was just a series of unfortunate events, an accident.
I'm no great detective like Mr. Sholmes. I don't have a gift for knowing the truth. But even I can see the taste of cinnamon toast crunch. Don't you agree, Mr. Naruto?
To be perfectly honest, yeah. There's a discrepancy in Miss Pavlova's story, I'm sure of it. I just can't quite put my finger on it. I confess. I was intending to let Scotland Yard deal with any outstanding issues on this matter. Oh. I'm only present here for a very specific reason. The truth is, you, Mr. Naruto, are simply a distraction. A distraction? I do hope you've not been finding your shackles too uncomfortable. God damn it. Ah! When did he do that? Especially as they're on your wrists as a result of my intervention. I was rather hoping I could resolve matters before we made our next forward call. You were Mr. Sholmes? Yes, but I overlooked one important detail. The deceased young man was a very close companion of yours. Was he not? Yeah, he was. He was my closest friend. I owed him my freedom, even. In that case, we must follow this to its conclusion. No further distractions. You must uncover the real truth here, Mr. Naruto. Whatever that may be. The key to this is the discrepancy in Miss Pavlova's story, I'm sure. If I can chase that down, maybe the truth will become clear. The truth about how you really died. How that scene in your cabin really came to be. Alright, I'll see what I can do. Excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Naruto.
So then, shall we begin? Yeah. What we should ponder first is the victim who lost his life in a cabin that was bolted shut from the inside. Was this truly an unfortunate accident? Or was it in fact no accident at all? That is what we must establish in the first instance. But we've already established it, haven't we? The man tripped over the kitten that had climbed into his cabin via the ventilator. Tragic, yes, but still an accident. Wait, let's just take a step back. It doesn't make sense if that's really what happened, does it? I'm going to have to ask you to spell it out for me, I'm afraid. Yes. It's starting to take shape now. There's a clear contradiction between the facts and Miss Pavlova's story here. The evidence is right there in Kazuma's cabin. It's undeniable. His death couldn't possibly have been a mere accident. Really? Let us show our hand, Mr. Naruto. Time to present the evidence. The evidence that proves unequivocally that the victim's death was no mere accident. The crime scene photograph? The truth is clearly recorded in this photographic print. There's no way that Mr. Aosuke could have left this message on the floor. That script. It's Russian, isn't it? Indeed it is. The word written means wardrobe. I see what you mean. Most people would leave a dying message in their native language, Japanese in this case.
But maybe he was studying Russian. It is a simple language. He could have picked it up very fast.
That doesn't seem likely. That's actually not the point. It makes no difference whether he knew Russian or not. Sorry? What do you mean? Exactly as I said before. There's no way that Mr. Asuki could have left this message on the floor, and the reason why is clearly explained in here. Damage to the cervical vertebrae resulting in instant death. Instant death. Ugh. Which means, after the victim fell to the floor, he couldn't possibly have written anything, because he was already dead. Oh. That is not the only reason either. There's something else we found in Mr. Asuki's cabin. A remnant of something that couldn't possibly have been there, if what Miss Pavlova told us was true. What? So Susato-san has noticed it too, then. Putting this message on the floor aside, there's something else that gives the truth away. Oh. What did we find? Was it the bell? The diary?
The log, because what's-his-face didn't save any.
The what?
The log, because during the event, every 30 minutes before now, someone would write no events, but then he didn't.
I don't think that's it. I think it was the bell. Yeah, we're looking at something that was found in the cabin, so it's got to be the bell.
Yes.
This piece of broken glass next to the mark on the floor. But that's the glass bell the kitten had around its neck. We already know all about that. It was broken in half when the victim tripped over the cat and fell. So we already have a satisfactory explanation. What's the flaw in that logic? Unfortunately, there's a pretty big flaw. A fatal flaw. What? That's really what happened. Then how did one half of the bell end up back here in this cabin? Ah. Yes, remember that we found the other half of the glass bell in that waste paper basket. Would you care to explain that, Miss Pavlova? Oh no. Both these pieces of evidence clearly point to the same conclusion. That when Mr. Asuki died last night in his cabin, there was someone else in the room. And that same person deliberately arranged the scene to disguise the truth, in order to cover up his or her own guilt. Yes, there was something else there present in Mr. Asuki's... Shut the fuck up! Someone else was in there? Duh, of course, we know this! What are you talking about? The bulkhead was bolted shut from inside. There was no way in or out. Oh, yes. I know. Only other person in the cabin when young student died was you. It's true, I was in the cabin when it happened. He was shut inside the cabin wardrobe, to be precise about the details. But I don't know Russian. There's no way I would have left that message. Not would have. There's no way you could have left that message, to be precise about the details. Would you mind? Shutting the fuck up? Forgive me, my dear fellow. As I was saying, the person in question wrote the word wardrobe in Russian on the floor, in an attempt to incriminate me for the crime, even though I had been asleep. But how did they even know you were in there? And then the same person picked up the person.
I heard. To the vent. You weren't as quiet. They didn't know what.
Yeah, probably. And the same person picked up the broken glass bell that had fallen to the floor, for fear of it becoming evidence that would show how Mr. Asuki really died. But why wouldn't this person have taken all the pieces of the bell away? Leaving half behind was always going to raise questions. Yes, well, it was past 1 o'clock in the early hours of the morning. The cabin would have been quite dark. A single small lamp suspended from the ceiling would barely have cast any light onto the floor there. Little wonder then that the culprit failed to notice a fragment of the tiny item. You all suspect me, don't you? Seaman Stroganoff. That sounds disgusting. Nina is woman of sea. She is daughter of strong sailor. 2 years ago they noticed her dancing skills and she went away to join ballet company. But before, she was dancer on this ship, a member of ship's band. It's a lot of information. You do not accuse ship's angel of being criminal. Ah, so that's it. You say that when young student died, Nina was there in his cabin. That's not possible. I give my tooth. Well, this is almost interesting. And why would you give your tooth, pray? How can you be so sure? You are great detective, you should know. Look, truth in eyes. Cabin bulkhead was bolted from shunts from inside. Nobody could go into cabin. Not Nina, not anyone. Or do you want to tell me that killer can walk through locked doors? Yet, it's impossible. He's right.
But wait, I've read about this in detective stories. People often tie thread through door latches so they can...
Shut up, Susato. Thread? Are you stupid? These bulkheads are not barn doors.
Certainly not. These are watertight doors, as one would expect to find on any modern steamship. Constructed of heavy steel with not a gap in sight, nor threads nor needles, nor magnets could have been used. Oh, I'm sorry. But Mr. Naruto suggested it earlier, so...
No, Susato-san! So Seaman Stroganoff has a valid point. The cabin door couldn't have been bolted shut from the outside. Not necessarily. But I put it to you that I could bolt this cabin door without laying a finger on it. And in this very cabin, we can see the traces of the method I have in mind before having been used before. I don't believe it. Well, Mr. Naruto, I believe you know what I mean, don't you? A way to shut the bolt of the cabin door from the outside. One way does spring to mind, yes.
Do you really know what Mr. Sholmes means, Mr. Naruto?
Yeah, and so should you. Because we've seen it happen. Indeed we have. So, would you care to do the honors, Mr. Naruto? Point out the telling signs of the method that was used to slide the cabin door bolt from across the outside. Across the outside. So, wait. The bell cord? Hold on, what? It's not in this room, though. It's the alarm.
Yes.
That's not right. Maybe it was the bell cord.
Yes.
Nope. The
Yes.
bookcase. That's not how it was done, though. God damn it, whatever. See all the books and things that I have toppled over?
That must have happened when the ship made its emergency stop before.
Yes, that's right. It's a very powerful vessel, after all. When the engines are thrown into reverse, a violent jolt goes across the entire ship. Any small objects that aren't fastened down are bound to fall over.
I believe
Yes, it's what's known as the force of inertia acting on the objects. Is there nothing Susato-san doesn't know? Or that isn't in her book, at least? Well, whatever it's called, the same force that pushed over those books in the bookcase also made something else in this cabin move. The bolt on the cabin door. Ah! It's very obvious just after the emergency stop that the ship made earlier. We had come into this cabin not long before, and we hadn't bolted the door. But then... Oh, yes. That's it. When the ship stopped suddenly, the bolt flew across and locked the door. Yes, it's made of metal, but it's small and light enough to be moved by the ship's sudden change of speed. Or the force of inertia, if you want to call it that. Ah, are you trying to say that last night, after Mr. Asugi was killed... Why, yes, of course. The SS Burio made another emergency stop? When I woke up this morning and looked around the cabin, I thought it looked a little odd. All the books on the shelves had toppled over, and all the ornaments. It was almost as if someone had run their hand across the shelves and deliberately knocked everything over. Oh yes, I remember that. And I stood them all up again, didn't I? Then when we came into this cabin, we were surprised to see the same thing in here. All the books and everything had toppled over, just like Mr. Asugi's cabin. Oh my! Do you have anything to say about this, Miss Pavlova?
Are you out of your mind? But you say Buria made emergency stop.
It does seem a little far-fetched. How could that possibly have happened? Unless you're saying that the culprit is actually someone from the engine room. Oh, it is simple enough. Hmm? Are you forgetting the button in the passageway outside? Used to trigger the emergency alarm. Oh yes, of course. There was a notice, wasn't there, telling you only to press the button in times of emergency? On dark nights when the fog is dense, the captain cannot afford to rely on the eyes of his lookout alone. Hence the placement of a number of buttons around the vessel to allow the crewmen to raise the alarm. The sort of button one is almost compelled to press to satisfy one's curiosity.
Wait, it was you?
When the button is pressed, two things happen in the interests of safety. The emergency alarm bell rings and the vessel comes to a complete stop. As indeed it did a little earlier today, when I pressed the button. Mr. Sholmes, surely it wasn't you who... As I always say, a button has but one purpose in life. To be pressed. Whatever the occasion. He sounds almost proud of himself.
How dare you mess with ship? I report you to Captain. You are in much trouble now.
Now, I'm sure all that can wait until later. Let us not overlook the fact that we are now have learnt a valuable lesson. When the vessel makes an emergency stop, the bolts on the cabin door slide closed. So, what we must now consider... Yes, it all comes down to one thing now. Last night, after what happened to Mr. Asugi, did the ship make an emergency stop, or did it not?
You are an idiot. Buria is huge ship with many passengers. If we make emergency stop even in middle of night, there would be chaos everywhere.
What are your thoughts, Mr. Naruto? Well, it's certainly possible that some kind of emergency happened last night. We have evidence to support that idea. Really? What evidence, Mr. Naruto? Fascinating. Do show us, my good man. What evidence promotes the theory that some emergency gripped this vessel last night?
The log?
Yes!
Seaman Stroganoff. It's your duty to patrol the first-class area of the ship, isn't that right?
That is correct. Why?
The ship's log here. This would be where you record the details of your duties.
What are you doing with that? That is mine.
Ah, you rather carelessly left it atop that little makeshift bureau in the passageway out there. But as responsible passengers, we took it into our care and with a mind to return it to you later.
I left it there on purpose. That is where I put it always.
The point is, looking at what you usually record, it's clear that under normal circumstances you write the phrase "nothing to report" every 30 minutes. But from 2 o'clock last night until first light this morning, nothing was recorded at all. Nothing recorded in the log. That is...
Duh, because nothing happened.
But if nothing had happened, you would have normally write "nothing to report." Wouldn't you? Indeed so, which tells us that shortly after 2 a.m., something happened. Here aboard the SS Bureau. Something sufficiently significant to make you forget to fill in the ship's log, in fact. Are you suggesting that the ship really did make an emergency stop in the middle of the night?
Stop talking rubbish.
If I'm perfectly honest, I find that a little hard to believe myself. Oh? Well, because if something as major as an emergency stop really had happened, surely all of us would have noticed. That's very true. Thanks to the emergency stop we experienced earlier, we all know what it feels like now. The ship lurched so violently, and the alarm bell was so loud. I can't imagine that anybody would sleep through that, even if it happened in the dead of night. Well, no. That's a good point. What of the throbbing? Sorry? What do you mean? Your head, man. The throbbing of your head since this morning. We have all suffered with it. Ah. Oh, yes. I have had a headache. You're right. In fact, I haven't been feeling myself since I woke up today. Nor have I. My head has been feeling heavy ever since dawn. Yes, you've all been afflicted, haven't you? Just as I suspected. He's right. My head's been throbbing today, too. And since eating dinner yesterday evening, everything has felt sort of hazy. I can't really remember anything that happened after I climbed back inside the wardrobe. Then the first thing I noticed this morning was the throbbing pain in my head. I had already been dragged out of the wardrobe and had those handcuffs put on me by that point. Why didn't I wake up when all that was happening to me? Tell me, Mr. Naruto. What time is it? You boarded this vessel as a stowaway, didn't you? Oh, well, yeah. Sorry. The stowaway class of accommodation doesn't usually include meals. What did you survive on? Well, Kazuma looked after me. He was always happy to share his meals. So he enjoyed some of the whole roast chicken dish that was served yesterday evening, I take it? Yeah, in fact, I had all of that. Kazuma wasn't fond of chicken. Oh, really? So the victim didn't eat any of the chicken at all? That's right. He didn't touch it. Is that relevant? My dear fellow, does that not strike you? Oh. Mr. Sholmes, do you mean to say that there was something wrong with the chicken? I do. What? No, really? What? The meal prepared for the passengers last night had been tampered with? Okay. Alright, we're gonna stop there. Holy shit, that's a jump in logic. I wouldn't have suspected that, honestly. I really just thought that they all just fucking bumped their heads at the same time. You know what? That makes sense, I guess. Alright. Well, we're gonna finish up this case next time. I'm Shikuquaza. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Side by Side Plays.